Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have an incredible guest. I'm so excited that I met her on Facebook. I was just reaching out to other business owners, other leaders in the community that had an interesting story that I related with, had some things in common with. She is also from Pennsylvania. I'm not from Pennsylvania, but I love it out there. It's one of the favoriteest places I've ever spent some time. And now she lives here in Arizona, so that's an exciting thing. But she's got an incredible story of healing and really overcoming as she's learned more about her body. So this is Heather Sunderland. And man, I'm so excited. We talked for about an hour on our last conversation. I just thought I have to have you on the podcast because there's just too much good things people need to know. One, about their bodies and health, but also that like when they're feeling hopeless and feel like every doctor in the world is telling them you're screwed, you're not screwed. You can just actually take control of your life. And that's important to know. So thank you so much for making this happen, Heather, even while you're on vacation. Thank you. And yeah, just tell us your story as early as you can to how did you get to where you are now?
Thanks so much, Samuel. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, my desire really is to give people hope. Years ago when I was really young, I was asthmatic and I had lots of digestive issues. I really never thought anything about it. Lived pretty normal, pretty athletic, teenage years, college life, tennis, racquetball, a lot of hiking, but still had those digestive issues, had asthma, would get bronchitis 12 times a year, never really thought much about it. That was just my thing, would be on antibiotics for bronchitis and sinus infections. Got married, had a kiddo, and by the time I was 30, I was always sort of a health and wellness nut. Didn't really realize that I've always been that way. My mom was a juvenile diabetic when I was born, so she was always very conscious about what she fed us. And by the time I was 30, I was a dietitian and I was a diabetic educator. I had a private practice, but I was having daily pain. I thought I had bone cancer. I just hurt all over. And I was labeled with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, immune dysfunction. I was just super, super tired, put on a little bit of medications, like antidepressants. And 5 years later, my symptoms were getting worse and worse, and new symptoms were arising, like neuropathy and difficulty walking. And I literally closed my private practice and stopped working because we felt I was just too ill, to manage that, and felt very much disabled. And as the years went on, I was just labeled with more and more illnesses. I was put on more and more medications. I was very into eating healthy, or so I thought. But we weren't getting to the root of what was going on. And by the time I was in my 40s, I was now on 17 to 20 prescription drugs that I managed to be on for 20 years. Before I was led to a place that did applied kinesiology or muscle testing, a holistic wellness center, and using whole food supplements started to see things shift a little in my health. I didn't get well. I was still sick and disabled, but seeing things move forward and some improvement in my energy levels and things. And then one of my doctors, I had just such terrible neuropathy, and that's nerve pain for people who don't know what it is. Sometimes it could be numbness. Sometimes it can be weakness in limbs. And it was always moving around, and a lot of digestive issues. And a doctor decided to do a blood work for Lyme disease. And I was 52, I think, when we did the blood work, and it came back. It did not meet the CDC requirements, but it showed I had Lyme in my blood. And the doctor chose to treat for Lyme. with antibiotics, and I didn't want to do antibiotics. So I went back to my holistic place and we used herbs, and I started to experience the die-off of Lyme bacteria. So I knew, and literally after 2 months of things dying off, my pain, which had been an 8 on average every day, went down to a 2. And I was just floored. But I was still disabled, even though I didn't have the pain. And literally, it was then when I had treated with herbs and I didn't have the pain that I started coming off those 17 drugs. And that's its own story in itself. But I came off fentanyl and Vicodin, and Valium was probably the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. And I actually did not sleep much for 3 years, 3 to 4 years coming off the Valium. And when all that was done, I was still, I didn't have the acute pain, but I still had trouble walking and I still had trouble standing, and my vertebrae would go out of alignment. Just a lot of crazy symptoms, literally at the chiropractor 3 times a week for 8 years. And we didn't really understand why I couldn't hold an adjustment. I literally could open a door and my vertebrae would move. It was crazy. Because of my health, we chose to move to Arizona. We wanted a 1-story house because I was really struggling to do the steps in our home. And we got out to Arizona, bought a 1-story house in an active adult community. And I used to be so active. I wanted to participate in the community and hike and play pickleball. But I had a walker and I was really struggling to stand. If I stood for more than like 60 seconds, my vertebrae went out. It was crazy. I lived in a 0 gravity chair by the time we got to Arizona. And it didn't make sense to me because we had already addressed the Lyme, like what was wrong. And I enrolled in health coaching school to be a functional health coach, hoping I might learn some stuff along the way. And I was in school in a 0 gravity chair. I mean, everybody knew me because the chair was back in 0 gravity position. I had a pillow, and that's how I was on all the Zoom calls, was in that position. So really, that's how bad it was. I could not walk from the front door of my house to my bedroom. I had little stools all over as places for me to stop and rest. And I finished school, graduated, got out there, started pushing myself to work. And I was so sick, and I developed during COVID, the Lyme actually resurfaced 6 times, which I didn't know Lyme could resurface. And I was diagnosed with active mono and with Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism, which is a trip in of itself, because with the Graves, I was awake for 72 hours at a time. And then I'd sleep a few hours and then be awake for 72 hours. But the health coach in me was always researching holistic methods to support my body, and the Graves got better. But then a friend reached out to me who was a health coach and said, Heather, I think you might have something called chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And I had never learned about it. And she said, well, maybe you're living in mold. And I'm like, I'm in a brand new house in the desert. Like, who has mold in the desert? But I found a doctor who treated CIRS in Arizona. I had the blood work, which basically tests for inflammatory markers that are atypical inflammatory markers. And if you can detox Lyme biotoxins, and if you can detox mold. And it turned out I couldn't detox either. And CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, is really your toxic bucket overflowing. And it can impact every single system in the body, all 11 systems. So people can show up with very crazy symptoms, and 3 people or 10 people can look totally different. So it often goes misdiagnosed. But when you're diagnosed with it, the next thing they tell you to do is to check your environment for mold. And I did not, because I thought, I'm in the desert, I can't have mold. But a friend came to my house and got sick in my house who had healed from mold illness. And so I tested. And we did have elevated levels of 2 particular molds. Black mold was one of them. And they were from building material that either got wet in the framing or we didn't leave our house. Many people have to. Our levels weren't atrocious. Some people can't heal in our house. And then I worked with this doctor. The traditional method to addressing toxicity is to bind the toxins. And so I was put on binders to bind out toxins. And when I started the protocol, I was on 10 foods that I could eat. That was all I could eat. I was very limited. My walking and standing was limited, and I had daily acute pain, and I just couldn't show up in life. And nothing shifted in 5 months of working with my doctor, who I still work with, and I love her. And then someone introduced me to regenerative nutrition and detoxification principles. And I didn't really, I didn't know what I was getting into, but I just felt like I needed to do something and I needed nourishment. And I started on a regenerative protocol, and then working with regenerative coaches who knew about rebuilding the body is really what regeneration is. And literally 3 days into the protocol, I was having positive shifts in my diet, going from 10 foods to 11, and it just continued to expand. And by 3 months, my brain fog had lifted. My walking was better. I went from not working to working as a health coach again, part-time. And it just, as time went on, it was gradual. I wish I could say it was simple. It was simple. It wasn't easy. But now it's 25 months later. 3 months ago, I was told I don't have Lyme, I don't have mold illness, I don't have chronic inflammatory response syndrome, I don't have Graves' disease, I don't have asthma, I don't have SIBO, I don't have osteoporosis. Like, I had such a long list of ailments, and my body's been brought back into balance. There's a few things we're still working on because I was sick for 26 years. I'm going to be 58 next month. So it was a really long time to be. And what we learned was I was being exposed to mold ever since I was a little girl in my childhood bedroom. So the asthma, allergies, digestive issues, I am sure were totally related. My bedroom, my mom said, had black mold in the wall, and they didn't know about it until they went to change a window out. So it's in the people I'm working with as a health coach, I'm finding that that's a missing link, our environment and the toxins that we're exposed to, not just mold, but other things as well, can be really huge, because 70% of the time you never see mold in a home. It's behind a wall and there's no smell. So I never tested my house for mold, like, until I had to, but I wouldn't have thought, oh, I'm buying a new house or I'm buying a used house, test it for mold. Nobody taught me that, but my journey has taught me something different.
Yeah, your journey has taught you that for sure. Man, there's so much here. End result, I'm going to sum it up really quick, and then we're going to go pull it apart by pieces. But if you're listening to this and you're not feeling right? You've got that, and she listed off, I don't know how many medical conditions. If you have any one of those, it's worth like looking into what's the cause beyond what the doctor's going to tell you so they can sell you more drugs. That's like the sum of it. Like, look at what's causing it instead of a Band-Aid. And if you have something you want to say to that.
It's all about addressing the root. I mean, I'm a functional health coach, but I really specialize in regenerative nutrition and detox. And the root for most illnesses are our nourishment. Like, what are we eating? Can our body utilize it? Toxicity and acidity in the body. I mean, that, and gut issues, like those are big underlying root issues.
I think sometimes people hear the word toxicity and it sounds toxic, right? It sounds like this. When I think of the word toxicity, I think of evil man in his lab with a vial or whatever it's called, those test tubes of like green liquid with some sinister plan. And maybe that's how it is. And those people are there and they're actually trying to kill the population. I'm not going to put, like, I'm just as much conspiracy theorist as I am anything else. So like, maybe that's how it is. But by the time it gets to the public, it doesn't look like that. And that's where I want to go a little bit. I think some things is ill-meaning, but like the mold in your childhood bedroom, there's just a natural part of building a house, right? And sometimes it rains while the house is being built. And that's not anybody's fault. They can only put the roof on so fast. It's just like, there's certain things that just happen in life. And sometimes we, especially in health, it's easy to say, oh, well, is my body getting the right nutrients? And so we overload on the nutrients without looking at, sometimes the things that are healthy or the nutrient comes with inherent toxicity because of how they were raised. And if we're just looking at the positive side of the equation without looking at what potential toxins are coming in with those nutrients, and it's not saying that you just stop eating them because you can't do both, but how do you then address flushing the toxins or the toxicity out while still getting the nutrients? It sounds like your body's supposed to do that to a level.
Yeah, I think today our bodies, one, genetics play a role in people and their ability to detox. And some people have poor genetics, but we can turn off those genes with our lifestyle and the choices we make, eating healthy, fresh, organic food. So I think we have a lot of choices, but your question is like, what did I do to get better to detox?
Well, yeah, I just wonder, from a detox perspective, how much of what you're doing to help somebody, and ideally help yourself first and then help somebody else, is how do you find out what toxins are actually coming in and where they're coming from, right? You mentioned you went down to 10 foods. I would be very sad if I could only eat 10 foods. I don't even like eating, but I definitely would be very sad if I only could eat 10 things in my life. It's not even a passion of mine, but 10 is very limited.
Yeah. They're different. Well, I think we're all exposed to toxins every day, our air, our water, our food. Some people's bodies do a better job based on their genetics or how they're eating, to get rid of things. So there are lots of different ways you can test, what you've been exposed to. There's hair mineral analysis. With people with CIRS, a visual contrast eye test is a neat place to start because the optic nerve gets inflamed when you're exposed to toxins, specifically mold and Lyme waste products. So I took that test.
Does that decrease your vision, or what's happening?
It's decreasing your ability to see contrast and shades. So I never noticed, I failed the test and so did my whole family, but I never noticed a difference in my ability my vision is perfect when I go to the eye doctor. So it's contrast. So it's a test where you're looking at lines that are tilted one way or the other, and they're different shades of gray. And I thought, oh, this test is easy. And then I was not seeing anything on the screen. And I missed about half of them. So it's a very inexpensive way to check if somebody thinks they have Lyme and they can't detox it, or they have mold, or they think they're super toxic. It's a first test I do with people, and it's called a visual contrast sensitivity test. I tend to go with things that are less expensive, but a hair mineral analysis, I don't personally do them, but I have colleagues who do, or a good picture of what can be going on in the body. I use something called an AO scan, which is a frequency device that can scan the body and show toxicities, heavy metals, just really a nice picture, and then of course there's blood tests depending on, what you're testing for.
Yeah. Cause I know for me, I've felt good from a health perspective, but it's interesting how, so I talked to one of my chiropractors, and they were talking about the flat line is good, right? If that's good, generally only people go into the doctor or into the chiropractor, into a functional health medicine person, when their homeostasis is now under that good line. And they're paying, or they think they're paying for the health medicine person to get them just back up to good. And then once they get up to good, then they're like, I don't need it anymore. At least I'm restored to my good. But they don't really realize, and I think we're all victims of this at different parts of our life, that good is not great, and great is not even God level, how we were created. And I don't mean God level in some cocky way, but God created your body perfectly in most situations. So, if that's how it should be, and then because of our environment, things we've eaten, things we're breathing, all that, we're knocked down to good. There is a way. Some people have genetics that maybe play a role, but even with that, you can learn your genetics and then get yourself back up to the best health. And how do you help somebody visualize, say, okay, maybe they already are good. They don't know how toxic they are because they aren't expressing it. Like you mentioned, some people, they can be exposed and their body is processing stuff okay, so they don't have this long list of situations, but they still could do a lot better. How do you help somebody understand the better that they could do?
I think it's talking to people about what they're looking for, what they want to be able to achieve, where they want to go with their body, with their career, whatever it is. If you don't have a goal and you're not excited to get there, there are people who aren't going to do the work to get better because it's work. It's not hard. it's not pleasant. I would say my journey hasn't been pleasant, but the rewards of gaining the ability to walk and get rid of assistive devices and to be able to go hiking and play pickleball now and do kayaking, things I haven't been able to do for over 20 years. And I'm not even done with my journey. Like I'm still, like I said, I'm in repair mode. So I know there's more to come that's going to be better. But you have to have that desire for something more, even if you're at a place where you're okay, but you desire to have a little bit more energy or better sleep or a little bit better digestion. But if you don't have that desire, it's not going to happen. There's got to be a desire there.
I think that's crucial. I was actually talking to somebody, I work in finance, right? So it's a different field of study, but it's still very similar. I was talking to somebody and explaining to him how inflation works and how, like, if you keep doing what you're doing, then pretty soon you won't have enough money for what you need, right? Because inflation will price you out of the market. And he's like, well, I just don't have time, right? I was like, well, time is the one thing you do have. And if you don't do something different with your time, then you're going to be forced to do something different later. You're going to be forced into a situation, and it's harder sometimes to operate from a limited position, right? So for you got to the point where you only had 10 foods. Had you have known this information when you were a teenager and could have started correcting stuff then, you could have avoided spending, 26 years in zero gravity chair.
Yeah. And lots of money chasing the wrong thing. I think the one thing, if I could do it over again, I wish people would know is we're just being exposed to things in our air and our water that we're not going to change. It's the nature of the environment we live in, EMFs, radiation, like stuff we can't even see, plus our food supply being more depleted, not grown in nutrient dense soil. We're not getting the nutrients we got in our food 50 years ago. So if people can be more conscious to do things, if they're motivated and open to that idea, to learn how to eat in a way that's going to reduce toxicity in their body, and support their body, naturally detoxing on its own on a regular basis. I wasn't doing any of that. I didn't know any of that information back then. And it's not hard. There does have to be a desire, though, in any change we make. There has to be that desire. And I was desperate and I was open.
Sure. So what are things that somebody could do at home? Like when maybe they experience some of this contrast blindness. I don't know if that's the right way to call it, but they're experiencing these things. What are some things they could just start doing that are just a general, these are good practices for every human to do, even without these big issues that are causing it? But like, what are one or two things they could change their habit, change their ritual, change their process in their home to just get a little bit level up on their health?
Well, I won't start with food because that's the easy one, but I'm going to start with the lymph system. The lymph system is the sewage system of the body, and it's right under the skin. It's like, if you go for a lymph massage, it's just a very light touch, gentle massage, but that lymph system doesn't have a pump like our heart does. So that lymph needs to be moved for toxins to be eliminated from the body. And a lot of us, we inherit it, the lymphatic congestion from our parents. If we're eating an acidic diet of meat and dairy, like our lymph can be more congested. So getting that lymph moving, so that means moving the body. That could be dry brushing. If you're sedentary or you have chronic health problems, you can take a brush with bristles and brush toward the heart, which again, the lymph, this is the way that we get the lymph moving, as we need to move the lymph. So you can manually move it yourself. You can go for a lymph massage. You can bounce on a bouncy ball. You can bounce on a trampoline. You can be in the shower and do some lymph massage, and you're always moving toward the heart. So with the arms, toward the heart, under the armpits, with the legs up toward the heart, with the face, neck down toward the heart, to get that pump flowing. Even deep breathing helps to get the lymph system.
Does the lymph system is it blood that's primarily pumping through the lymph system?
No, the blood and the lymph are separate.
So what's the concept going towards the heart, I guess? So I better.
I can't off the. Yeah, it has to do with. You're absolutely right. It has to do with the chemistry of the blood and the lymph. The blood is going to deposit into the lymph, the toxic waste. But the heart, there's a pump in the circulatory system.
So the heart is shelling off the chemicals that are not healthy into the lymph system.
Right. And that's in the lymph system, is the sewage system of the body to get rid of the toxins. It goes through the lymph first. Then it'll go to the bowels for you to poop it out through your urine, through your kidneys, to leave the acidic waste through your kidneys, or you sweat it out. And then we also breathe out toxins in our breath. Those are the four, big pathways for elimination of toxins. But the lymph system in so many of us is congested. And if people are sedentary, it's even more congested. Even I'm sitting in a chair doing this with your arms is going to get that lymph, that lymph flowing, or marching in place is going to get that lymph flowing. So any kind of movement or exercise, even if it's gentle, will get the lymph moving. Hot and Epsom salt baths will get the lymph moving. So those are just simple things you can do at home. I mean, you can take an Epsom salt bath every day, and it's relaxing, and it helps to pull out toxins from your body. And so simple things. But the other thing I would say is really being conscious of your food and the choices we make, and moving to eating a more alkaline diet, which is more fruits and vegetables. It doesn't mean you can't have acidic food, but try to make more of your diet alkaline. Right. I traveled, and I'm in a hotel, and my husband has the car on company business today. So I went and had bought frozen veggie burgers at Sprouts, and we stopped and bought a whole bunch of fruit and bought some organic peppers to dip into some hummus, so that I had food in the hotel room. So I just stop at a store when we're traveling, and then we eat dinner out, and then we'll pick a place that's organic or healthier or vegan, where there are healthy choices to eat. But the quality of our food is really important. So if you can buy organic or work on eating organic, have you ever heard of the Dirty Dozen?
I've heard of them, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what they are. I just heard the term.
It changes every year, but the Environmental Working Group puts out a Dirty Dozen list of the foods that have the most pesticides, and the top 12 are on that Dirty Dozen. And typically it's your salad kind of greens like spinach and kale, your berries. Those are things that are important to buy: organic, tomatoes, celery. And if you have it in your budget to buy all organic, I would do that. I mean, and organic doesn't mean you're getting no pesticides. Even organic apples can be sprayed for the first 14 weeks. So the more we can decrease, wherever we can, exposure to chemicals, whether it's makeup, skincare, lotion, those go right into the body, and get into the bloodstream in 26 seconds. Those things we're putting on our skin, and then the body has to process it. So just gradually shifting things over in your home, healthier food, making more organic choices. We're exposed to a lot where we don't realize that. We drink water out of plastic water bottles, and the chemicals from the plastic end up in the water, and then you leave them in the car. I mean, in all our food, when we buy it from the store, so much is in plastic, and then people are throwing that plastic in the microwave, which you don't want to do. Better to, because then you're getting those chemicals into the food. So if you can cook on the stovetop and let go of your microwave, or use it less, and just wherever you're willing to make a shift, to make a change, you run out of a product, replace it with something that's simple and clean, and you can read the ingredients and you know what it is, instead of something that you don't know when you look at the label what you're buying.
Right. No, those are all very good. So thank you so much for sharing those little things. I want to go into, if we can, more detail here in your limitations, because I just think it's not every day you meet somebody who is basically, I mean, not in a coma, your mind was still very active, but from a participation in the world perspective, very, very limited. And so, I'm saying this from a perspective of, I was a missionary for my church, and I went to Scotland and Ireland for 2 years. And when I was gone, we didn't watch TV. We had a little tiny brick Nokia cell phone. So technology, we didn't hardly use computers. Once a week to email our family. We drove cars, but other than that, all we had was our scriptures, and we talked to people. We didn't listen to music. We didn't watch movies. Like, there was nothing. And so what's crazy is now I watch Netflix often now. I enjoy it. So I watch it, and I'm watching some of these stories that came out in the world, and how so a lot of them happened during that 2-year time period where I was, for all intents and purposes, out of the world. Like, I was just not participating. I was alive. I was still talking to people, like human to human, but on a global scale, I wasn't participating, and I didn't know a lot of things happened. And so now, a decade later, I'm like, when did this happen? This is crazy, And I'm like, oh, it happened when I was gone, So that's just 2 years, and I was still able to move around, still see news articles, still see things. The type of technology development, just technology, but let alone medical advances, the state of our country, like everything in 20 years, that's a big span of life to be essentially limited on your participation, to say the least. Talk through like what that's like now, re-entering. Cars are different. Everything's different. It's just crazy. So I'm just curious, like, how is that mentally to go through that? I know you were mentally cognizant the whole time, but.
Yeah, I mean, I was participating in life. It was just my boundaries were different. I couldn't drive for 10 years. I couldn't be in a vehicle for 10 years. So I couldn't go to family outings because I had so much pain, and it would just mess me up. My pain was already innate. So to go away, and then I'd be in acute pain with no break. And I was already on all these drugs. And I was just like, I think I just need not to go in the car. So, I mean, I think it was my relationship with God that really allowed me to just, at the time, accept where I was. I mean, I did a lot of having to process it. I had to process it more when I was getting well than while I was sick, which sort of sounds crazy. But while I was sick, I was in a place of focusing on, this is my memory of it. My husband may say it was a little different.
That's okay. Your experience is the real one. Everybody else's perception doesn't matter because you're the one I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, I know I struggled with the limitations. It was frustrating. I thought if my son gets married, I'm not going to even be able to go with the wife to go shop because I couldn't go to a store and stand, and I was just in so much pain. I wasn't leaving the house. I never really thought that could change. I mean, I could, there were just so many different aspects, but I tried to show up where I felt called. And God just, even then when I was sick, always put people in my path who were struggling. So I was ministering to others who were struggling, who were in chronic pain, who were limited, even then. So I had a purpose, but I was just frustrated that I couldn't go do what I wanted to do, and I still sometimes get frustrated because I'm not totally where I want to be. I may be able to go hike, but I'm a little out of breath because I've lost some stamina. Right. I may be able to go play pickleball, but I'm not where I want to be strength and stamina wise. And I have some work ahead of me to get there. But God has me where he wants me. I don't always in my head feel that way, but God has used the story and brought it full circle. So now I can relate to people who are really struggling, and I may not have the same, we all have a different journey, but they know I've been there and I've walked the path.
Right.
And so they appreciate knowing that somebody else has been through something similar.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the cool part is that you went through so long and we're able to maintain like the desire and the drive to get better and constantly be searching. Some people, and it sounds like it happened to you to a degree, but not full surrendering, where like you do get to the point, 26 years, you start to feel slightly hopeless, even though you're constantly doing it. You're like, okay, is this one going to work? Is this really a thing? Can I trust you? Last person said this was the thing and it's not the thing. So like the mental fortitude to keep going.
Yeah, that was from God, I think, because I still wonder where I got that perseverance to like keep looking. And someone found me who had this answer, this regenerative approach to addressing toxicity and alkalinity and lymphatic congestion in the body. I hadn't learned about it in school. My doctors didn't know about that approach. It was a different approach. So I'm just thankful that God put that in my path. But even the process of healing and detoxing, it was not fun. I had symptoms every day for 18 months of major detox symptoms and having to kill parasites up the wazoo because of all the years of undiagnosed Lyme. So, but I knew that I had seen shifts. So it was the fact that I had positive shifts that made me be able to hang in there in the process. And, knowing that God was using it, because he just started bringing people with Lyme and mold and CIRS in my path, and they'd find me. And I was able to start helping them through the process of what I had learned about regenerative nutrition and detoxification principles. So, but I wish I could skip ahead and be totally done.
Yeah, for sure.
The way it works. Yeah.
So along with that, because that's like the health side and the functioning side, there's a lot of people, and full transparency here. So my little sister, she got diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia back in 2016, end of the year 2016, and she fought that for 5 years. Finally, she did some functional medicine things, and it actually went into remission in February, but she was still attached and on a lot of these opioids and narcotics, and she didn't make it past the withdrawals of those. So she ended up, for all intents and purposes, as far as we know, she overdosed. And again, I don't judge her journey at all. I mean, it's a tragic thing, and we love her and we miss her, but not everybody's able to get off of fentanyl and morphine and like all these different things. And so going through the withdrawals, I mean, there's the re-entering life, which is a big enough task. Determining, okay, I haven't done anything for 20 years. What do I even like? Do I like hiking still? Do I like kayak? Like, it's easier to sit on the couch because that's what I've been doing for 20 years. So your body's primed to think there.
No, in my head, I've had a list of all these things I want to do. I just started country line dance, and I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing
Lord, I'm getting out there, and I'm going to get stronger, and I'm going to try something new. So I don't know. In my head, I've always, looking at the mountains in Arizona, I would tell my chiropractor, I just want to go for a walk. And he goes, you'll get there. He said that to me for 4 years. And then I went for a hike, and I literally a half a mile hike, and I needed 9 visits to the chiropractor. Now that's not the case. Like, the issue was toxicity creating inflammation in my spine. And so I don't know. I've always had that list of, I'm going to enjoy the moment. I have to work on it, right? It's a continual mindset thing of, I'm going to be thankful for what is, but I'm going to hope and dream about, this is what I'd like to do if the Lord allows me to do it.
And that's incredible. So how did you manage through the detox? We say detox, right? But there's a withdrawal period when you're getting off of narcotics.
Yeah, the hardest thing to come off of was not the pain drugs, because I didn't have pain anymore. The hardest thing to come off of was the Valium, which is a benzo, which the doctors forced me to come off of. It wasn't my choice. They said you can't be on a benzo and Valium or fentanyl. You couldn't be on Valium with fentanyl. So they didn't give me a choice, but they did. I had to find a doctor who allowed me to taper at my pace. And and I was excited to come off the drug in my head. But then as soon as you taper, at least with Valium, I had immediate anxiety, and I had never had anxiety before. My heart racing, sweating, my sleep totally shifted. And I had to keep telling myself, well, this is for my good. This is for my good to get off this drug. I don't need it anymore. I know it's going to be a process. I never thought it would be 4 years to finish the withdrawal symptoms. If you had told me that up front, I don't know what I would have done. It was better not knowing
how
long it was going to take, and just setting up my mindset to, I'm going to get through this. But I'll tell you, 8 months into that process of not sleeping, and I slept in a separate room because my husband, he could sleep. And when you can't sleep, to see the person next to you sleeping just drove me nuts. So I set up my other room with, audio books and a book, because I knew I was going to be up half the night. So I might as well relax and make it pleasant. But 8 months into the process, I was a mess mentally, physically, because I wasn't sleeping and I was crazy in the head. At least that's how it felt. But I knew it wasn't going to last forever, even though 4 years, when I look back, I think, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that again. That was the worst, was the Valium.
That's incredible. And then let's talk about, again, I'm trying to just talk about all the perspectives I can think of, just because it's so, I just love your story. I love it. So what about from your family perspective, like children, husband, how did they handle it from like the whole process, even siblings, parents, seeing you get ill and then now seeing you get better? Who was with you from the beginning to the end? Were they all there? Did people kind of dip in and dip out based on what they can handle?
Yeah, my husband was all there, but I don't know, typical guy, like I'll support you any way I can, but he doesn't like hearing about it. Tell me what you need. You need a hug. You need me to take you to the doctor. Super supportive. We spent $200,000 chasing things that weren't the answer. Super supportive the whole way through. But he doesn't get excited that I'm better because he loves me either way. Like he's that kind of guy. He's just very even keel. So, but he's thrilled that I'm able to do things. He's going to start to have trouble keeping up with me now. I keep teasing him.
Better start his detox, right?
He's been working. He's been working with me all along. My family, I don't know if they ever really got it. For 20 some years, I didn't have a diagnosis really of what was wrong. I had labels. Now my parents are 80 and 85. My mom was so sweet recently. She just said, I'm so sorry, but like this all started in your childhood bedroom, because they understand and they're so excited to see where my health is now. My son too. He was 5 years old by the time I was disabled. So I could not go and do a lot of things. When he was growing up, when he was a teenager, I couldn't drive in a car at all. So he had to find his own way getting places. And he's living back in Pennsylvania. And he's seen me well, and he's happy for me. But I don't know if anybody ever gets the process except for the person who goes through it, because you're alone. It's you and God. There's nobody else who can get it. Even somebody who's come off the same drug, it looks different for each person. And I think I have more of a support system in place now that I'm helping other people with the same illness than I did when I was going through it, because nobody understood what I had. I was like 30 years old in a church where no one understood. Why was I in and out of a wheelchair? Why couldn't, we didn't have a name for it. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't something people have heard of. So I have such a support system now with my clients. We're a community within of itself, supporting each other and praying for each other. So that's been really like a cool part of this end of the journey, has been the community that's formed out of it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So to that end, if somebody if somebody needs your help or is struggling, or they know somebody who needs your help, where do they contact you? Like, how do they get a hold of you? How do they join the community? Maybe they just want to wake up happy every day and they want to hear people's success stories. Where do they become part of the community, or just reach out to you and direct people to you?
Sure. They can email me at healthcoachingbyheather@gmail.com. And I've got a website it's healthcoachingbyheather.com. I'm on Facebook, but it has nothing to do with my health coaching business, but a lot of people find me on Facebook, and it's Heather Sunderland. And that's a good place to start.
Interact with you. Awesome. So I just want to ask you a few final questions here. I'm really intrigued to hear your answers about these, because of the type of life that you've lived. It's going to be curious for me. But what do you feel like right now is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy?
Well, can I share what the next level of my legacy
Sure.
is?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
So I feel like my legacy is to give people hope, and I want to get that info out there to more people. But I feel like a little bit what's holding me up is the repair work, the regeneration work my body's doing. My body's working hard to repair, so it makes me have symptoms. Like I'm more tired. So it's just like I'm still having to have those. We all have boundaries, all of us. We all have 24 hours in a day, but we have different limitations. But I don't have the energy yet to help as many people as I'd like to.
Okay. And then what's and again, they're two separate questions that might be the same, but what would you say is your greatest success at this point in your life?
I think my greatest success is, what the Lord has allowed me to do through my own body, and, him allowing me to work through this process of getting better. I mean, to me, that's the greatest accomplishment. And then to be able to do that I've had others who are right behind me that I've worked with for a year or 2 years, where they're almost to the point where their labels are gone. For me, that's, I don't know. I mean, having a child is a great success in raising him, but just personal to just me, that doesn't involve a spouse.
Sure.
Would have to be my journey, and then helping others see them get well has been, my great joy and my great success.
I love that. So what are maybe one or two habits, mindsets, behaviors, little secret things that maybe you think, I don't really share this with everybody, but this has really helped me? One or two things that somebody else could adopt into their life to help them have a life like yours? As far as I think, your mental ability, for me, at least listening to you and talking to you now a second time, your mental strength and focus is amazing to me. But that's just what I recognize. I'm curious what you would say your secret.
My mental stuff, in my own head is like all over the place. So you're just seeing the end result of the process. We all have that. But, something that a friend said to me, get a notebook. I mean, this really helped me. When I moved to Arizona, I was so negative, so whiny with where I was. Start jotting down 3 things you're thankful for in the morning or at night or both. And when I started to do that, you start to rewire your brain. You start to see the positive the more you do it, even in a negative situation. I broke my back in the midst of all of this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, shattered L4, flat on my back. As soon as I went down, my head was thinking, like, I gave it to God. But when I realized I could walk again, I was so thankful I could walk. I was in bed for 3 weeks, but you looked at everything differently. I saw everything that I could do, not everything I couldn't do, but it was all because you're rewiring your brain, because you're writing down what you have to be grateful for. And you start with 3, but it can grow and grow and grow, to what you're thankful for physically, spiritually, friendship, socially, your home. And the more you do that, the more you start thinking, even if you're limited, you have so much to be thankful for, so much. And it does start to change the way. And if I don't do that, I will start getting, the glass half empty, and I have to go back to it. It's a constant. For me, I'm a glass half empty person. So it's constant work.
Hey, no, I think that's amazing. And I cannot agree more. For me, that's the biggest thing that saved me in my life, is just constant gratitude and looking for the way to be grateful. And it's annoying to people that know me. They're like, how are you so grateful? I'm like, well, I could choose to be grateful, or I could choose to be a sourpuss. I don't know. I just choose to be grateful. It's not something I am, or that I see all the crap too. You want me to list off all the crap that I see? I could list that off too. But I choose to only list off the good things in my life because I'm happier that way. And no matter how bad it gets, I'm happier, even if it's miserable for everybody else.
Well, and if you list off all the things you're not happy about, it becomes a spiral. But I get the same response, totally annoys certain people that I'm there's a really difficult situation and I'm trying to look at what could come out of this.
Well, they think your life isn't hard. How could your life is just not ever hard? It's no, my life is hard. I just choose to think about the parts that are good. It's not that I don't experience pain, sorrow, heartache, mourning, loss, all that. I experience all of it. And I choose to be grateful for the fact that I get to experience it. Some people, they don't get to experience those things.
Right.
So anyways, It's fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Heather. I really hope people reach out to you. Go ahead and say your email and your social media again, just so that they can, if they want to connect with you, they can.
Sure. It's healthcoachingbyheather@gmail.com. And the website is coachingbyheather.com. And if you want to find me on Facebook, it's Heather Sklar, Sklar Sunderland, on Facebook. And you can private message me or friend request me, and I'll look forward to getting to know you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Heather. And we will catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.